Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by a contribution from Anonymous. And here's her story. And this is the same Anonymous that we've been hearing from recently with, well, you'll know immediately. Hi, Ollie. How are you and Charlene? Thank you so much for reading my first 3 stories, The Rage of the Down Low Narc and Why You're There, When the Narc Mom Divorces Her Son Husband, and The Narc's Gaslighting is Meant to Break You. This is episode 4. Warning, this story is not particularly chaotic. Intro. It is so confusing, cutting through all the gaslighting. Part of me refuses to believe that my mother deliberately sabotaged me. I am low, but still no contact with my mother. Still not no contact with my mother. My younger brother's partner is having a baby soon. He still lives in the community where we grew up. My mother now lives with stepdad too in a big city. I live in a smaller city where I have no family. My sister-in-law is going to another city to give birth. My mother is going to visit them to see the baby. She wants me to stay with her in the same motel. Although I do really want to see the new baby, I am struggling with my confusing relationship with my mother. When I was going through my problems with my ex, I spent hours on the phone to her, and she seemed to offer empathy. She was also there for the birth of my daughter and provided a lot of support. However, after watching your videos, I can see some subtle undermining of my parenting and of me. This is also confusing to me since I have a strong bond with her because I spent a lot of time with her as a child. I guess in a lot of ways, we were like friends. Mother's undermining tactics. When my daughter was a newborn, she was in the car seat and my mother's little dog was in the car. She got closer to my baby than I liked. I removed her and asked my mother to please not allow her to get so close. She told me that she knew her body language and that she would not hurt the baby. That's not the fucking point. Another yippy dog. I tried to reason with her and tell her that she was my child and I felt I should decide how close the dog gets. She then said in a condescending voice, "Yes, Anonymous." When I further tried to reason with her, she kept repeating, "Yes, Anonymous," in the same tone. I did not have my own vehicle or the means to remove myself, so I just took it. I would not do that to a mother, even if I was confident that my dog would not hurt the child. One time when a show assistant asked if my daughter could have a lollipop, I said no. I tried not to give her too many sweets. Then my mother went and bought her an ice cream and said grandmas are allowed to do that. I was not upset because she bought my daughter an ice cream, but the context in which she did it felt like she was undermining me as a mother. Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if your mother takes your daughter out for ice cream, out, and but for her to do it right in your face, after which you've already told her no, and then to shove it in your face, It's supposed to be here, don't tell your mother. That's how, like, the cute grandmother game. No, not shove it in your fucking mother's face. So your daughter learns, oh, you don't have to listen to her, you just come to me. It is undermining. One time I was sitting down with bare, unshaven legs. She stroked the hairs. When I reacted strongly and tried to reason that I respected her space and things, she told me the more I resisted, the more she wanted to do it. Oh, that was She told me that I should get us to it, and the way to stop a horse flinching, you are breaking in, is to touch it until it does not flinch. Oh, so you're like a horse now. Wonderful, like an animal. My maternal uncle tells me my mother's mom would constantly push boundaries with her. My mother also tells how she would remove her pants and smack her bare buttocks with a hairbrush. On another occasion, I was staying with her and in the converted shed she had made. I made a cake and supposedly made too much of a mess. Keep in mind, at this stage, I was still extremely traumatized by my breakup and the abuse my ex put me through. She implied subtly that she always cleaned up as she went. I said that I was working in an unfamiliar kitchen. She gave me a look of disapproval, as much as to say, yeah, right. And, you know, my mother would ruin that as well when we're on vacation, down at the shore house. You know, I'm cooking for them. And she's yelling at me that I'm making a mess. Like, you can't even do anything nice for them. I am the first to admit that I struggle with organization. However, I do not think her look was needed, especially when I was in such a fragile emotional state. I tried to tell my mother that her comment hurt and I did not like it. When she tried to wriggle out of it, I told her that I am staying with her. I always shut the door properly because I know she does not like the sound of a banging door. She said that the door in the shed needed to be shut properly because it was fragile. When I pretty much backed her into a corner, she said that I always bring things up when I visit her. When all other strategies were exhausted, she said, but I have a husband that might be going to jail, pulling at my sympathy strings. Since I was narc ignorant, that worked well, and I ended the conversation. Stepdad 2 accused of rape. At that stage, Stepdad 2 had been accused of rape and was awaiting jury trial. He was found not guilty, but my gut says he did it. Because of this, he was not allowed to be in our small community where the woman resides. The woman he was accused of raping has a reputation for being promiscuous, so that would not have been in her favor. The night it happened, Stepdad 2 went out drinking and my mother was at home. Supposedly, he went to share the gospel with her, but instead ended up drinking with her. Went to share the gospel, ended up sharing some cock. That happens. Praise be. Oh God, did he call his dick Jesus? I mean, like what? What was that, the body of Christ? Did his dick become the body of Christ? I mean, I don't mean to be vulgar here, but I mean, come on, come on. My mother called her an unfortunate drinking partner. Wow. This only surmising here, but Stepdad 2 is a very large man with a temper, so maybe the woman just went along with him in a state of shock to avoid physical injury. I have experienced his temper. It is also interesting that he picked a woman with her reputation. Also, after the trial, he posted a pic on Facebook of himself and the lawyers with the comment, "Well done, team." Whether or not anything sexual happened between them, I believe the fact he went to see her alone when he was married is wrong. I never go to visit a married male friends when their wife is not there, out of respect for her. He was found innocent while I was still living in the shed. Ex comes for one supervised visit. Last year, when my ex came to my country to see my daughter, he stayed with my mother and Stepdad 2 for about 3 weeks. My country's main international airport is in the city where they live. I already informed him through Facebook that there would be no unsupervised access, which I think he thought was a joke because when he arrived in my country, he just texted and rang me as if nothing had happened. He agreed to come down on a certain date, and my mother agreed to also come down at that time to be with me and supervise the visit. He turned up several days earlier, and I got a call from the police station saying that my ex was there and asked me about the situation. I told the officer that there were good reasons that we had been no contact, and he said fair enough. Through text messages, my ex tried to manipulate me into bringing my daughter into a public place without a third party. He did not want my mother to supervise the visit because he blamed her for supposedly convincing me not to go back to East Asia. Also, my mother saw through his facade of manipulation. My ex said he was even happy for someone from the court to supervise the visit. He is one of those guys who can always appear squeaky clean, so when he would have had them convinced that I was the villain. My mother was one of the few people that validated me at that time. Stepdad 2 is totally on my ex's side. Stepdad 2 blow up. Speaking of stepdad too, several months before I came to live in this city, I thought of living with my mother and stepdad. There is a campus of my university there. I thought my mother could look after my daughter and we could all cooperate and things could work out. At this stage, I was still living alone in the shed with no hot water or inside toilet. Naturally, this meant I was keen to get away. For the first 2 weeks of me staying there, things were good. But by the second week, Stepdad 2 started showing classic narc tactics, which I did not recognize at the time. When I said to him, "Where's the bread, mate?" in a friendly tone, he replied, "In the freezer, mate," caustically. He then went on to say, "I'm not your mate and you don't call my friends mate." Being totally ignorant, I tried to reason with him and he managed to twist me into a tangled mess of emotion, resulting in me shouting at him. When he saw how enraged I was, he looked at me with the same tranquil and satisfied look Stepdad 1 used to give me and calmly said, "Man, you're out of control." Prior to this, he had poked and tested me with jabs about my parenting. All this happening when my mother was away at work. The next day I tried to be the bigger person and move on. I made everyone a cup of coffee and put breakfast out for everybody. He sat silently in the armchair while my mother, daughter, and I were eating breakfast. After breakfast, I was praying out loud. This seemed to trigger Stepdad 2, and he said to me, "You evil thing." Then stepped forward abruptly, pointing his finger at me. I took my daughter to the neighbor's place while Stepdad 2 and my mother fought in their bedroom. I was honestly scared that he might hit her and felt guilty for not standing up to him. However, I know that was dangerous and pointless. I recounted what happened to the neighbors. The man went over and tried to reason with Stepdad 2. However, he was still saying that it was his property, implying that he can do and say whatever he wanted. Later, my mother and Stepdad 2 came over to the neighbors. My mother immediately grabbed my daughter out of my arms. I took her back and was later accused of grabbing her like a rag doll. I tried to get my stepdad to go somewhere to cool off so I can get my things. However, he would not budge. When they saw that I was not going to go back to their house, they told me to go and call the police, so I did. When the officer took separate statements and recorded the incident, he tried to play mediator. However, I was firm in my decision. After giving the statement, I went to my room and got as many things as I could carry. I planned to stay in a motel. The cop asked me if I wanted my mother or him to drive me there. When I chose to go with him, my mother gave me a very disapproving look, but did help me pack the car. When I was staying in the motel, she came to visit me and said Stepdad 2 could live in the caravan and we could have the house. Looking back, this was probably a shit test to see if I would come back for more abuse. Exactly. Throw him the fuck out. While I was at the motel, my mother accused me of getting in the Stepdad 2's face and that I was like a dog with a bone and wouldn't drop a subject. She said I could really get a guy in trouble with that behavior. Sounds like he gets himself into trouble just fine. She also asked if I was out to destroy Stepdad 2's reputation like the woman he was accused of raping was. I really did not have much to say to such statements, so I ignored them. After staying in the motel for several days, I went back to our small community. Ironically, my son, husband, and niece had advised me to get out of the situation long before the blow-up occurred. She is an extremely astute judge of character, even though she will not face the truth of her own behavior. She gave me a place to stay for a while, then I went back to the shed. About 2 weeks after I went back to the shed, my ex arrived and tried to hoover me. He had planned to stay with me at my parents' place. That hoover is covered in the video when the son-husband narc divorces her son-husband. Ex arrives for one supervised visit. After telling others that I was keeping him from his child, he only saw her for one afternoon, when he was staying in my city for at least several days. My mother was with me for about a week. He could have chosen to see her each day that week. On that visit, he gave me a whole heap of photos of our time together, and a small, creepy, goth-styled mirror, and a school bag for my daughter. When I returned home, I put these gifts in the rubbish as they were far too traumatizing. I should mention that he wanted me to sign a divorce agreement in his language that said, after the child is 10, she can choose who she lives with. I did not sign it, and I am not worried about getting the divorce, since the marriage is not valid in my country. Also, aside from being a single mother, I do not know if I will ever have the energy for another relationship after the abuse I endured. I literally have no reaction to seeing a handsome guy or talking to one. I feel like a genderless alien. This is good because it means I do not have to deal with frustrated desire, which does make me feel strange. I personally think that the healthiest decision for me is to stay single and focus on my daughter. However, I do not want to instill in her an unhealthy view of men. I would dearly love to see her grow up and have a relationship with a good, healthy man. Desire to empathize with mother. Part of me wants to have empathy for my mother because I know I was so gaslit, that I was so damaged, that I actually chose to have a child with a monster. If the Hoover had succeeded and I had gone back to East Asia with my ex, my daughter would have experienced such traumatization. If I had not learned about narcissism through audiobooks and YouTube, I probably would have become an enabler in a vain attempt to maintain a harmonious family. Maybe I would have engaged in the same behaviors just to survive. I know her parents had an extremely dysfunctional relationship and divorced my mom when my mom was 18. She tells me this is when her promiscuity started because she felt like her anchor had been cut. My story, Rage of the Down Low Narc and Why You're There, documents all the abuse that I put up with and the bad decisions I made during that time. Because of my bad decisions, my daughter will never get to live with a healthy biological father. I know that thought is pointless because my daughter is already here and I love her dearly. However, I feel sad for her. There is still a part of me that is confused as to whether my mother is a covert narc hiding behind an overt narc, or simply so gaslit and traumatized and still trying to change people for the better. I can remember as a child crying because my stepfather was talking about my dog. My mother confronted my stepfather and said, "You have driven her to tears." After talking past her and then going back and forth, she said to me, "Dry it up, Anonymous. It's only a dog." And you think she's just gaslit. No, she's the gaslighter. Another time, I remember my mother confronted my stepfather about his younger brother who owned a third of a farm and would not do his fair share of the work and try to tell them how they do farm work when his trade was a mechanic. My mother tried to express how frustrated she was and was met with the phrase, "Don't be stupid." Looking at that statement with narc knowledge, it is clear that her needs and feelings were no concern to him, just like my ex did not care about mine. Look, you're confusing the narc's desire to fight about anything with the narc defending you. Some narc families like mine will fight with anybody over anything. Okay? Just because you're in one of these families where the enablers fight just as much as the narcs fight, or the coverts and the there's just these families like ours that can't stop fighting with each other. Don't think because it was convenient at the moment for them to fight over something over you, it's not about you, it's about them, and it's just about their need to fight. That's why it changes from second to second. They're just on to the next fight. My mother tried to express how frustrated she was and was met with the phrase, "Don't be stupid." Looking at that statement with narc knowledge, it is clear that her needs were no concern to him, just like my ex did not care about mine. Yeah, nobody cares about anybody's feelings in a narc family. Nobody cares about anybody's feelings. That's what it is. They don't care about feelings. They don't care about each other's feelings, only their own. Only their own. That's why it's so easy to fight with each other and not give a fuck about everybody else's feelings, because the only feelings that matters are their own. And when you got a bunch of people in the same family squared off like that with that attitude, this is what you're going to get. Stepfather's death. When I was 18 and went out to Polytech, my stepfather fired himself from the job and decided to split the farmlands into thirds. The first year that I went to East Asia, when I was 19, my stepfather got cancer and died 3 years later. After he got sick, the verbal jabs stopped, but there was never any allocution over the way he treated me in the past. For the last 6 months of his life, I wanted to go back to our small community and be with my family, especially my brother, because I know when I lost my father, I did not receive much emotional support. I wanted to be there to help emotionally support my brother. To my maternal grandmother's credit, she did come over and look after me after my father's death. Thinking that I was being the bigger person, I decided to try to be there for my brother. I reasoned that even though my stepfather had abused me, he was still my brother's father, and he was devastated over his death. I also sympathized with him losing his father at the age of 17. Just before I went back, a friend asked me, "Is your presence really necessary?" Meaning that I had made progress and that going back into the situation would not be good for me. At the time, I thought she was cold, but knowing what I know about narc abuse, she was right. The night before he died, I was on the night shift caring for him, and I would lift him up into the office chair and wheel him to the toilet, then help him onto the toilet. My stepdad demanded that I wake my brother up so he could take him to the toilet. I refused, because my brother had to work the next day. After my mother and brother and I had been working in shifts caretaking him for about a month, he called me a little bastard for refusing to do what he wanted. He then proceeded to go to the loo by himself. Interestingly, the first email the narc sent me appeared to emphasize with the abuse I had suffered at the hand of my stepfather. My older so-called Christian friend told him about the abuse. Always be careful about who you open up to. Sorry that this story is so jumbled. It's like peeling back onion layers. You are providing such valuable resource for narc abuse victims. Keep up the good work and send some encouragement for Charlene, for me, Anonymous. All right. Your overall question, because you're still haven't gone no contact, because you're still trying to hold on that your mother somehow is just gaslit and she's not. Just because the narcissistic family fights over you doesn't mean they're fighting for you. It's about themselves. Some families just like to fight. Period. They'll fight over anything, and that's why your mother can defend you 1 minute and then throw it back in your face in the next, because it's only about her, not about you. You're just a pawn. You're just a tool. So you're getting these moments where somebody in your family will stand up and defend you. It's not about you. It's about them. It's about the fight, which is what narcissists love to do. So thank you for another contribution and another story. I really appreciate it, Anonymous. And thank you for everything you do. I really hope this helps. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comments section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, or a Facebook chat, or you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just sponsor the channel in general for equipment, more videos, see it expand, keep the lights on and the rent paid. You know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. And if you're still unclear, wait for the instructional video link to pop up on the screen at the end of this video to walk you through all of that. And if you're not seeing it, be sure your pop-up blocker is not on. Please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been The Narcissistic Resistance.